My brother slapped my daughter in the middle of the reunion and sneered, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, both worthless." He let out a loud laugh. My own father just grinned and added, "She had it coming." What they didn't realize was that the event's microphone was live, and my response, it made his world collapse. The scent of roasted chicken and over-perfumed aunts always meant one thing: a family reunion. This one was special. My father's 70th birthday, held at a fancy banquet hall in a quiet Ohio suburb, the kind with manicured lawns and an unspoken pressure to keep up appearances. The room buzzed with the low hum of conversation, punctuated by the clinking of silverware on porcelain. I stood by the dessert table, sipping a soda, watching my 10-year-old daughter Maya, who was sitting at a corner table, completely absorbed in her sketchbook. She had this way of disappearing into her own world, a world filled with fantastical creatures and vibrant colors. My wife Sarah gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You doing okay?" she whispered. She knew these events were a minefield for me. I nodded, forcing a smile. Just another day in paradise. My family's paradise looked great on the outside. My father, a retired executive, had built a life on the image of success. My older brother, Kevin, was his masterpiece. Kevin worked in finance, drove a German car, and had a handshake that felt both firm and dismissive at the same time. He was the golden boy, the one my father saw as a continuation of his own legacy. And then there was me. I ran an online business from my home, designing and selling custom handcrafted furniture. To my father, this was a cute hobby. To Kevin, it was a joke. I was the quiet one, the artsy one, the one who didn't fit the mold. I was, in their eyes, the lesser son. "Mark, get over here!" My father's voice boomed from the head table. I pasted on my son-duty smile and walked over. Kevin was there, regaling a small audience of cousins and uncles with a story about a big deal he'd supposedly just closed. Told him, "You want to play in the big leagues, you gotta bring a big check," Kevin boasted, followed by a chorus of impressed chuckles. My father clapped him on the back, beaming. "That's my boy, a real shark." He then turned his gaze to me, and the warmth in his eyes instantly cooled. "Mark, still messing around with your little wood projects on the computer?" Before I could answer, Kevin chimed in. "Hey, leave him alone, Dad. Someone's got to make birdhouses for a living." He winked at me, but it was a predator's wink, not a brother's. The laughter around the table felt like a physical blow. I just stood there, my hands in my pockets, feeling that old familiar mix of anger and helplessness. I'd spent my whole life in Kevin's shadow, my achievements always measured against his and found wanting. The only thing that truly mattered to me, my real success, was Maya. She was my light. A few minutes later, she skipped over to the head table, her sketchbook clutched in her hands. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "Grandpa, look, I drew a griffin for you for your birthday." She held up a beautiful, detailed pencil drawing of the mythical beast. My father glanced at it for less than a second, his attention already drifting back to whatever Kevin was saying. "That's nice, sweetheart. Now run along, the grown-ups are talking." He didn't even take the book. He just waved a dismissive hand in her direction. I saw the light in Maya's eyes dim. She lowered the sketchbook, her smile faltering. "Oh, okay." She turned to walk away, her shoulders slumping. That single, casual dismissal hurt more than any of the insults they'd ever aimed at me. I walked over to Maya and knelt beside her. "Hey, can I see it?" I asked softly. She handed me the sketchbook. The griffin was magnificent, its feathers individually detailed, its eyes fierce and proud. "Wow, Maya, this is the best one you've ever done. This is professional-level work." She looked up at me, a small spark returning to her face. "Really?" "Absolutely," I said, putting my arm around her. "Grandpa is just distracted. It has nothing to do with your art. It's beautiful." We sat back down at our corner table, far from the center of power. I tried to shield her from the toxic energy radiating from that head table, but it was like trying to block out the sun. The party wore on. Speeches were made, toasts were given, mostly to my father, and by extension to Kevin, his proudest product. The event was being recorded by a videographer, and the microphone stood on a podium at the front of the room, used by each speaker and then left on, humming silently. I remember watching my Aunt Janet walk up to Kevin and gush about his success, her hands clasped together in adoration. Then she shuffled over to me. "Oh, Mark, it's so good to see you. Sarah told me your little shop is doing all right. It's wonderful to have a hobby that pays the bills, isn't it?" She patted my arm condescendingly before moving on. A hobby, my business, which I had built from scratch over 6 years. The business that provided a beautiful home for my family and put food on our table was just a hobby. The slow burn of resentment I felt at every family gathering was starting to feel more like an open flame. The breaking point came, as it always does, from a small, insignificant accident. Maya, having finished her soda, was walking back from the beverage station. As she passed the head table, where Kevin and my father were now loudly debating some sports trivia, she tripped on the thick carpeting. It wasn't a big stumble, just a little wobble, but her hand knocked against a tall glass of ice water, sending it tipping over. Water splashed across the white linen tablecloth, soaking a small patch and startling an uncle. It was nothing, a simple accident a child would make. But Kevin's reaction was instantaneous and savage. "For crying out loud, Maya, watch where you're going," he snapped. His voice was so sharp, so filled with disproportionate anger, that several nearby conversations stopped. Maya froze, her eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry," she stammered, tears welling up. "It was an accident." "An accident? You're always underfoot, always making a mess. You need to learn some awareness," Kevin continued, his face twisted in a sneer. I was already on my feet, moving toward them. "Kevin, back off. It was an accident." "She's a kid," I said, my voice low and dangerous. But my father intervened first, not to defend his granddaughter, but to support his favorite son. He looked at Maya with cold disappointment. "Your uncle is right. You need to be more careful. Clumsiness is a sign of a distracted mind." He wasn't yelling. It was worse. It was a calm, clinical judgment, delivered as if he were critiquing a flawed product. Maya began to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked from her uncle to her grandfather, two men who were supposed to protect her, and saw only condemnation. My heart shattered. I reached them, stepping between Kevin and my daughter. I put my hands on her small shoulders. "It's okay, sweetie. It's okay." I looked at Kevin and then at my father. That's when it happened. Maybe it was the defiance in my eyes. Maybe he just wanted to inflict the ultimate pain on me. Kevin looked past me at my crying daughter. His face was a mask of cold fury, and with a sudden vicious movement he reached out and slapped her. It wasn't a punch. It was a sharp, stinging slap across the cheek that made a sound that seemed to echo through the now silent hall. Maya gasped, a little cry of shock and pain escaping her lips. She stumbled back into me, her hand flying to her red cheek. The room fell completely silent. The string quartet had stopped playing. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. Time seemed to slow down, every detail etching itself into my memory. The shocked face of my aunt, the way the light gleamed off Kevin's expensive watch, the terrified, betrayed look in my daughter's eyes. Kevin looked down at her, a cruel, triumphant smirk on his lips. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree," he sneered, his voice dripping with venom for everyone to hear. "Both worthless." He then let out a short, ugly laugh, as if he'd just delivered the cleverest punchline in the world. I stared at him, a rage so pure and cold washing over me that it felt like ice water in my veins. But what happened next was the final betrayal. I looked at my father, expecting, praying for, some flicker of humanity, some defense of his own flesh and blood. Instead, a slow, thin-lipped grin spread across his face. He looked at my crying, humiliated daughter and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "She had it coming. Needs to learn some respect." That was it, the snap. The final cord that tethered me to these people was severed. I pulled Maya behind me, holding her tight against my leg. My vision tunneled, and then I saw it. The podium, the microphone, the small, blinking red light that meant it was live. broadcasting every sound to the speakers placed around the large hall. In that moment, a plan formed, born not of revenge, but of a desperate need for the truth to have its day in the sun. I gently squeezed Maya's shoulder. "Stay with Mom," I whispered. Sarah was already moving toward us, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. I walked past them, my steps even and deliberate. I walked to the podium. I could feel every eye in the room on me. I picked up the microphone. The slight feedback it made was the only sound. I looked directly at Kevin and my father. My voice, when it came out, was not shaky. It was calm, clear, and amplified. "Good evening, everyone," I began. "You all just witnessed my brother Kevin strike my 10-year-old daughter. And you witnessed my father, his father, approve of it." A wave of murmurs swept the room. I held up a hand. "Please, I ask for your attention for just a moment." I turned back to my brother. "Kevin, you said my daughter and I are worthless. Let's talk about what you consider worth. You see my business as a joke. You and Dad have been mocking my little wood projects for years. You think success is a corner office and a fancy title you didn't earn." Kevin's face went from smug to pale. "Mark, don't do this." "Oh, I'm doing this," I said into the mic. "Let me tell you all a story. 12 years ago, I worked at the same firm as Kevin. I was in line for a huge promotion. I had spent 6 months developing a proposal for the Sterling account, a project that would have made my career. I was so proud of it. The night before the presentation, my work, all my files, all my research was wiped from my computer. The next day, Kevin gave the presentation. My presentation. Word for word. He got the promotion. The gasps in the room were audible now. I looked at my father. "And when I went to you, Dad, and told you what he did, you knew. You knew he stole it. And you told me to be a man and get over it. You told me to let it go for the good of the family." My father's grin was gone, replaced by a ghastly gray pallor. He tried to stand, to say something, but he seemed frozen in his chair. I wasn't finished, so I did. I left that world of sharks and I built something of my own, my worthless hobby. You all know Kevin likes to boast about his income. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. What he doesn't boast about is that his big league deals have gone bad. Dad, that huge investment Kevin convinced you to put your retirement savings into last year, you might want to ask him for a statement. You might want to ask him why he's 3 months behind on the payments for that German car you're so proud of. My worthless business, on the other hand, cleared 7 figures last year, net. The silence in the room was now absolute, heavy, and suffocating. Kevin looked like a ghost, his bravado completely shattered, his face a mess of sickly white and blotchy red. My father was clutching his chest, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, no words coming out. I placed the microphone gently back on the stand. The quiet click was like a gavel falling. "You wanted me to become a man, Dad," I said, my voice no longer amplified but carrying with clear, cold finality across the still room. "A man protects his child. A man builds an honest life. A man stands up to bullies, even when they share his blood. You taught me nothing about any of that, but I learned it anyway." I turned my back on them. I walked to Sarah, who had her arms wrapped around a still shaking Maya. I scooped my daughter up into my arms. She buried her face in my neck. "We're leaving," I said to Sarah. She just nodded, her eyes shining with tears and a fierce pride that felt like a lifeline. Together, we walked through the sea of stunned relatives. No one said a word. No one tried to stop us. We walked out of the banquet hall, out into the cool night air, and we never looked back. The drive home was mostly silent. Finally, Maya's tiny voice broke the quiet. "Was it my fault, Daddy?" My heart broke all over again. I reached back and took her hand. "No," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "No, honey, never, ever, ever think that. This wasn't about you. This was about old, sad problems that have nothing to do with you. You did nothing wrong. I am so, so proud of you." A few days later, my mother called. She was weeping. She told me the aftermath at the party was catastrophic. My father had become so agitated he nearly collapsed. Kevin had fled the hall in shame. The family was fractured, with some relatives calling me to offer stunned support, and others branding me a traitor for airing our family's dirty laundry. But then, through her tears, my mother gave me the final piece of the puzzle. "He was always so hard on you, Mark," she sobbed, "and he always pushed Kevin forward, even when he was wrong." I never understood why, but after what you said, he finally admitted it to me. She took a shaky breath. He said Kevin reminded him of himself when he was young. Charming, but always looking for the easy way out. Always insecure underneath it all. And you, your quiet, hard work, your talent, it was like a mirror to him. A mirror showing him everything he wasn't. He pushed you away because you scared him. It wasn't just that he favored Kevin. It was that he was actively against me because my integrity highlighted his own lack of it. The revelation didn't bring me satisfaction, just a profound, empty sadness for the man he could have been, for the father I never had. Months have passed. We have had no contact with my father or brother. The invitations to family holidays stopped coming, which was more of a relief than a loss. Our lives are quieter now. The silence is different. It's not the tense, brittle silence of a family dinner, waiting for the next passive-aggressive remark. It's a peaceful silence, earned and paid for in full. I spend more time in my workshop now. The smell of sawdust and wood stain filling my lungs. It feels clean. It feels honest. My business continues to grow, but the numbers on a screen mean little compared to what I've truly gained. This afternoon, I was sitting on the porch watching Maya and Sarah plant flowers in the garden. Maya was laughing, her face smudged with dirt, completely carefree. The scar on her cheek from that day has long since faded. The scar on her heart, I hope, is healing too. She is surrounded by a love that is unconditional. A love that doesn't demand she be anything other than exactly who she is. I broke my family that day, but in doing so, I saved my own. I finally understood what it meant to be a man, and it had nothing to do with a big league checkbook or a father's approval. It had everything to do with the sound of my daughter's laughter carrying on the breeze.